issued a statement last night. US and UK envoys also sent a joint statement on the killing, and will also be getting reactions from the political divide, that is NASA and Jubilee. And of course, as police continue with investigations, we find out what the latest is from their end. With me in studio as we look at news shaping the day, I'll be joined this morning by, among others, David Osiani, who is a public policy analyst. Good morning, and thank you for being with us today. We're also joined by Dekla Omukoba, who is a communications expert. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Also with us is Brian Mutie, who's a governance analyst, and we're also joined by Joy Mdivo, who is a governance analyst. We'll be looking at news shaping the day here on Citizen Extra, starting with our guest panelists in studio this morning. We're also going to be talking to our reporters on the ground. The election's just under a week away. Stephen Leto will be joining us from Kisii, and let's hear from his end what is happening on the campaign trail in that part of the country.
Well, good morning to you, Lillian, there in the studio. A lot is going on here in Kisii County. This is where the National Super Alliance Brigade will be landing today to traverse several parts of this county in their hunt for votes. Remember, yesterday, the Jubilee Party, led by President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, were here on another charm offensive of the Jubilee Party to seek a chunk of the votes that are scattered in this county. And today, it's when the National Super Alliance is coming now to reverse the gains made by the Jubilee Party yesterday, few days to the general election. Remember, Kisii County is one of the crucial votes that has been regarded as a swing county with about 546,000 registered voters. And in the last election, Raila Odinga of the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, by then, scored about 236,000, with President Uhuru Kenyatta in 2013 garnering about 95,000 votes in that particular election. By then, there were about 412 registered voters. And it is now this additional number that both the National Super Alliance and the Jubilee Party intend to convince into their sides. But yesterday, remember, the National Super Alliance was supposed to be in that stadium, Kisii Stadium, but there was an issue over the issue of, you know, who will use that particular venue. But the Jubilee Party had their way, and they proceeded to use that particular stadium, that is the Kisii Stadium. But when the National Super Alliance principal will be landing, they will be landing in Kisii before now spreading over into several stops. For instance, Raila Odinga will be leading one team that will be going through Nyacheki, Masimba, Ogembo, Nyangusu, before now culminating, before that they will be coming to Etago, and they will be coming also to Sameta. Then later they will be joining other principals at the Kisii Stadium, whereby they will be having their final rally for today. But another team being led by other NASA principals, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, they will be touring the southern part of Kisii County. First, they will start their rally in Magenche Market. They will also be coming to Etago, and then they will be going towards the Kisumu Road, where they will be starting at Suneka, Nyakoe, before now also coming to a joint rally at the Kisii Stadium. A lot is up for stakes here in today's rally. Remember, this is their final sprint, the final dash to convince their supporters to come up in large numbers and vote for their preferred candidate, that is another presidential candidate, Raila Odinga. A lot of issues that has been topical here in Kisii County. The locals here are farmers. There has been issues about the tea bonuses here. There has been also issues about developmental projects that have been launched here in Kisii County. There has been also the issue of the integrated internally displaced persons, whereby there has been some have been compensated, some are yet to be compensated. So is the National Super Alliance taking that on the Jubilee Party, saying that they have been unable to completely resolve the issue of the IDP here in Kisii and Nyamira County, and that is why they have been making frantic efforts to ensure that they traverse across every single part of this particular region to ensure that they they, they convince the populace here to vote for them. But all the same, there is all that vote, that crucial vote. Remember, it's now working towards having control of the swing vote counties. For instance, here in this section of Nyanza, Nyamira County and Kisii County has been placed as a swing vote counties, and so each of the coalition intends, to convince a huge chunk of the population to vote for their side or for their preferred candidate in the August 8 polls. Remember, Kenyans will be headed to the polls on Tuesday, and it is the final dash for the political parties, particularly the presidential campaigns. And for here in Kisii, there is a lot of local politics that has heated both the two sides of the NASA coalition as well as the Jubilee Party. The issue of the gubernatorial seat here in Kisii County. Remember, several members of parliament and senators have defected from the opposition, from ODM, to the Jubilee side, and that they are now facing off with their opponents who have remained here in the NASA team. And so that is expected also to play out. We are expecting a lot of political showdown also here in Kisii. For instance, now there is a lot happening in Kisii town. There is a crisscrossing of the town. Guys already going into Kisii Stadium, waiting for a 3 p.m. rally that will be graced by Raila Odinga and his NASA co-principal. But for now, we are going to traverse several parts of Kisii just to follow up with what the NASA team will be headed into the grassroots regions in Kisii County. And later on, Lilian will be able to converge at the Kisii Stadium for their final rally. And there then we'll be able to keep you up to speed of every single thing that will be happening on the NASA campaign trail here in the county of Kisii. Lilian.
Many thanks for that. That is Stephen Lator, who is in Kisii County. Of course, we do know that NASA continues with its campaigns, and this is, of course, coming very close to the election that is slated for the 8th of August. That is Tuesday next week. We'll be joining Jackie Maribe later, who's on the Jubilee trail, and she'll be updating us on what is happening on the Jubilee side of things. This morning, we want to look at the death of Chris Msando, who was in charge of Kenya's computerized voting system. Police said that yesterday that the bodies of Msando and an unidentified woman were found in the Kikuyu area in the outskirts of Nairobi. That's in Roysambu. Rather, he had been seen in Roysambu earlier, and the records they have are up to about 2:47 a.m. That is Saturday morning. We want to look at the wider concerns around security around the elections, as well as other issues surrounding the death of Msando. Let's begin with you, David. The timing of this death for the country, a very few days to the election, a very competitive election that is. In terms of election preparedness, where does this leave the country? Is this a drawback to the elections?
Lillian, foremost, let me pass a message of condolence to the family of Chris Msando. The death of that gentleman is one of the worst things that has happened in our country. It seems to be normal. It leaves a lot of questions. We no longer know who is safe and who is not. It is easy to decide or to come up with the notion that his death is attributable to the political timings. Whoever did that is bold, stupidly so. I'm sorry to use the term. There are too many questions. I hope that the police, for example, have arrested Moses Kuria, who seemed to be in the know of what Msando was doing, where he was, and with whom, before the police themselves were able to know. I hope we are able to interrogate the Twitter handle, which has only 200 followers, that was used to break the news, that seemed to know that this is Msando's car. We want to know how. I hope we are able to get questions answered, you know, on why him, why just before testing of the kits, why now, why the man in charge of the data center and the infrastructure of IEBC. Be that as it may, I want to hope that the IEBC has a competent team that will be able to do this. Of course, It doesn't seem to me as if our police will be able to address this. I hope that they're able to accept the olive branch extended to them by the US and the UK to interrogate and put the matter to rest, for the simple reason we have had our local police and our local security team, yet to date, Lillian, we don't know who killed Yebe. Yet to date, Lillian, we don't know who killed Tony Oguda, the husband of the estranged wife of Honorable Tuju. Yet to date, Lillian, we don't know who killed Mutula Kilonzo. Yet to date, Lillian, we don't know the circumstances under which Otieno Kajwang died. Yet today, Lillian, we don't even know anymore whether or not to believe the autopsy reports of Nkaiseri's death. Woe unto Kenya, I hope that we are able to summon some little courage and address these assassinations, knowing very well what an assassination means in my description.
Right, and you know, when you look at details surrounding this death, so far very scanty. What we do know from police is that the last that he was heard of is at about 2:47 a.m. Saturday morning. Joy, just looking at the IEBC commissioners, first of all, their reaction to this, they are clearly shaken by this particular incident. Is this meant to send any kind of warning to the IEBC commissioners? This is, of course, a high-stakes election, and you know their reaction to this, and the credibility of the IEBC commissioners coming after this, of course, very serious threat to their own security as commissioners, not only them but also Kenyans at large.
First and foremost, also my deepest sympathies to Chris's family, because I know this is a very terrible time, and I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty of what may or may not be going on, because we do not have enough information to jump to any conclusions. What I will say is, having been in that situation before, where as a state officer, sometimes you feel your life is at risk because of the job you're doing, I join issue with Chairman Chebukati and with the sentiments that he issued yesterday, that right now they are persons of interest. The job that they are doing is critical to this nation. As a nation, the least we can do is ensure that they have enough security to be able to do the work that they are doing. Don't forget that Chris Msando was not important to Kenya simply because he was the ICT manager at IEBC. He was a well-learned person. He was making a huge contribution to this nation, to his family, and having lost that is something we cannot recover. So I would expect moving forward. I saw Inspector Boynet, Inspector Boynet saying that all the IBC officials be given enough security. But moving beyond that, Kenyans have to get to a place where elections are not do or die. It's not worth losing somebody's life for us to be able to win an election. And the person who did this, whoever it is who masterminded, ordered it, and executed it, thinking that they're going to have to reap some reward from this, might be surprised that actually it's going to backfire on them. We have to come to a place where it doesn't matter which side of the political divide you're on. We roundly condemn such behavior. We do not condone such behavior. We smoke them out. The leaf being extended by the US and the Britons, in my opinion, may not amount to much. We saw Inspector Troon coming in after the Ouko murder and the fanfare of the Scotland Yard at that time. And what it does, it puts the Kenyan officials on edge, and it puts them on the defense such that the cooperation doesn't really work. What I would like to see is for our own security forces, our own investigators, to step up and to do their job. Those people have a huge responsibility, not just to themselves, but to the country, especially after the debacle at the DP's home over the weekend. We want to be sure that our Kenyan security forces are up to the task. And if they're not, let us look at retraining, at recruiting people who can actually handle the job. Because if we don't have a national police force that is able to come, for example, what David said, this car was found in Resambu. A little video was circulating on social media before even Moses Kuria turned up. Members of the public had been there. What did the police do to secure that? It was a potential crime scene. What did they do? The body was found and reported and taken to City Mortuary on Saturday. We are learning about it on Monday. It shows that our police force is not as efficient as it should be, as it could be. And so if I was an IEBC official today, I'll be making arrangements also for my own security, but I would like to see the state stepping up. I mean, why are we giving security to politicians and not giving security to other people who are critical to this election? We need to take everybody's life seriously, and we need to see the government stepping up and saying, you know what, we have dropped the ball on Chris, but nobody else is going to suffer this fate.
Right, and you know, to you, Decla and Brian, you know, I mean, whatever order, you know, David talked about interrogating issues surrounding how this information was relayed. We know there was a lot of banter on social media. Some people even making fun of the fact that he was having a good time, that the late Musando was having a good time in Roy Sambu, and then we see other elements coming out, including sections of the political divide, and also reiterating the same. When you talk about security surrounding the elections, and particularly for persons who play such a critical role, you know, social media just going forward, and the damage that lies therein in some of the information that is spewed out there, and some of the things that could potentially be serious issues that are totally misconstrued on that platform. On your end, Decla, should the police have taken the issue of Musando having been reported missing right from the beginning on social media as seriously as, of course, the situation ended up being?
I would like to also pass my condolences first to the family of the late Chris Musando. It is true that the police should have taken action when they heard about, you know, the news that's going on social media. But the other thing that we need to point out is that so many times there's a lot of speculation that goes on around. But because Mr. Musando was a very senior person in IEBC, and he had already been reported to be missing, we would have thought that the police would have taken a step to do something to at least go out and look and find out what is going on, because it was a very critical matter.
Right, and you know, Brian, once again on the security surrounding the elections, this is a man who held very sensitive information regarding the KIMS system, and yet we do know that he and other very senior IEBC officials do not have security. We also had yesterday from Charles Owino, he himself as well, saying that he is very senior in the police force, but also does not have security. When you see politicians being accorded due security, but persons such as Musando not being given this much needed protection from the government or from whatever officials that are mandated to do so, where does that leave us as a nation?
Thank you, Lillian. First of all, my condolences to the family also, and the entire nation. Of course, it's a big loss for us as a country, but also echoing on sentiments that were given yesterday by one Charles Owino, the police spokesman. I think it's unfortunate for Charles to, or for Owino for that matter, to equate his role or his stature in terms of his responsibilities as a police officer, no matter how senior he is, just because he has no security, you know, organs to protect him, doesn't mean that Musando did not warrant that. But again, I do echo your sentiment, and I do agree with you that it's unfortunate that we are learning too late that there was need to put proactive measures into place, so that these people, men and women who are actually being mandated with this role of giving us credible elections, are protected 24 hours. But this never happened. And to me, it's a learning lesson, Lilian, because when we know the nature of information, when we know the role that Musando was tasked in terms of being the database administrator and infrastructure, the IBC, this is the man who probably had the password, the only person who had the key to understanding the kind of electoral system that we do have in our country, and maybe the person who could only, you know, access some, you know, finer details within that arrangement. So we ought to have known better, and IBC and Chairman Chibukati would have actually put proactive measures in place to ensure every person responsible for whatever small detail within the IBC is accorded this kind of security arrangement. But again, I think, Lilian, our democracy is on the radar. The world is watching how we are actually going to navigate through the whole process. And I think this is the time that we needed to put a statement across the global arena, how we have come of age in terms of being able to stand on our feet and give that credibility to the whole electoral process. That seems to be, you know, to have been compromised, because when you look at the nature, how this person died, of course, it looks so obvious on what was the cause, because this clearly is politics as a head, and of course the stakes, as I always say in this platform, Lillian, are very high, and it is the high time that we as a country need to actually understand there's future beyond politics, there's future beyond the elections, and the moment we understand that, we shall be able to actually, you know, address issues without, you know, resorting to extremes. This is an extreme measure that has been taken by somebody who I would say was actually being directed by sort of insanity, or maybe is living a different world where he thinks that politics is everything in this world. It's not about the politics, Lillian. We have better things. We have other issues that complement the very pillar, that complement the political pillar, to make it, you know, a comprehensive system that make men and women live in this country. So to me it was unfortunate.
And the IEBC chair, Chebukati, yesterday actually said, Chebukati said that there was torture, and he, of course, also raised concerns over their security as IEBC commissioners. So when you look at the fact that Msando held very sensitive information regarding the KIM system, you know, the test run was supposed to happen yesterday, that has since been postponed to tomorrow. Looking back at 2013, David, where this system failed spectacularly, we had to resort to a manual voting system. With this recent development, will the vote be protected from electronic manipulation? I think that's the question that a lot of Kenyans are happening. There's a lot of anxiety because people are reading a little bit more into this killing. Of course, it's been labeled as an assassination from different sections. Where does this leave the voter in terms of the faith they now have in the system?
The reason why the assassination of Chris Msando is worrying is that he was the one man who was in charge of ensuring that we are able to have a tamper-proof method of transmitting the results and eventually declaring those results. In the previous election, 2013, there was a problem of a server that was interfacing so that results come from the ground and they get to that server, and it is believed that therefore they were being changed there and then mirrored onto the IEBC server, leading to fictitious figures at the end. And questioned about this by different media houses, Msando made it very clear that they had had 4 layers of security for their network, for their apparatus, for the infrastructure itself. He assured the country that regardless of what happens, we have all this encrypted. No one can look into our system or infrastructure and be able to even read the results. When they leave the polling center, even the returning officer at the constituency level was not able to alter them, all right? And the way he explained it was quite assuring. What we don't know is what did he know that would make him be killed? And if he is dead, is that knowledge in another depository? That's why there is speculation that's rife, Lillian. But then I expected by yesterday the police should have said that, you know, when you get to Thika Road, you and I have been there. There are enough CCTV cameras. Who drove that car? Which is the believable truth? Is it that the car was in Roysambu, or as the police said, it was behind TRM? Which is which? Was it in an apartment? Was it dumped behind the mall? Who was driving it? From their cameras, who was the driver of the car? And what was the movement from where the car was dropped? Because even TRM itself has sufficient cameras. Don't I find it very outrageous that the president and his deputy have not even sent a message of condolence after their mouthpiece, Moses Kuria, was allegedly the one who broke the news? Aren't we leaving too many gaps for Kenyans to feel for themselves? Does it then look pretty obvious who his killers may have been?
Yeah, which brings us to the question of what kind of message was this essentially supposed to send. We know that NASA, has spoken out on this particular incident. We get to hear from the other side of the political divide. This being a high-stakes election, what message do you read in all of this, Joy?
You know, unlike David, I would be very hesitant to start weaving conspiracy theories for the basic reason that when you're faced with a situation like a murder, it is important to understand that the first 72 hours are very critical to the investigators to be able to find out the truth. While they are doing that, it does not help us to poison the minds of people, to get the emotions riled up. We have to be responsible.
Joy, sorry.
We have to be responsible with our. We have to be responsible with our.
And these holes have to be patched.
And even those gaps, there are people who are detectives who are well able to fill those gaps. And when time comes, everything will be put to light. And it's one of those things, for example, when you're looking at a murder, you have to find out who stands to gain the most by this person's demise.
Exactly.
Like even when we were talking about, when earlier we were talking about how the people need security. You know, you can have security detail that ends up to be your worst enemy.
Of course.
We as a people have to get to a place where we are not so invested in the process as to make it do or die. One of the things that I find very, very unfortunate is as a nation we can normalize this situation and say, look, it must be for political gain. Maybe it was just a random murder. We do not, we do not know.
Yeah,
and until we have got better information, there is a reason why I'm putting it out there is because what if at the end of the day investigations are done and what comes out, by the way, is less than dramatic as we expect it to be? Will we be able to accept it?
Police are carrying out investigations.
Exactly,
we will be
and that is
statements from them. But before that, I think a very critical question that came up last night on Monday Special to the police spokesman Charles Owino is that when we look at inquest into murder in this country and particularly political assassinations, quote unquote, we hardly ever get to hear what the conclusions to those investigations were, and I think that is where a bulk of the questions were surrounding the fact that we do not know after a while what happens in as regards the answers or what was found and what the conclusions to the investigations were. Brian and Declan, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Lilian. I think the timing of his death actually makes it look so obvious that there was political, hand in his death. If he died maybe when the stakes were not that high, perhaps we would say maybe it could be speculated to be another reason. But again, I think in Kenya we have a reference point where such kind of assassinations do not find their place in the justice system. And on record, I think we have never, been able to be treated to a situation where it is actually laid bare on a potential, somebody who perhaps could have killed somebody. I mean, somebody who killed somebody. It has never been on record here in Kenya, Lilian, so I'm afraid. And this being just one of the possibly or a potentially part of the statistics, we can only pray for this country because, as I said before, Lilian, I think we always pretend that we are maturing democratically as a country that has matured in a way that it can actually tolerate one another in such kind of a high-stake game is a country that will never hear such issues, Lilian. So in Kenya, I think we, as much as we pretend that we have gains, our democratic space is expanding, but we are treated to such a kind of rudimentary sort of democratic, practices, which are only seen in countries that do not actually, adhere to the rule of law and the due process. They do not observe apparatus such as transparency, accountability, and above all, they do not even, have any regard to human life and all that, human rights as well. So it's unfortunate, Lilian. But again, as I sum up on this one, we have 6 days to go, and this country, let me be honest with you, every eye, every ear across the globe has its focus on this country. And the very obvious, the geopolitics nature of our country, how we are situated, how we are located as a country, what are the stakes that other countries have in our country. So we have to ensure that we keep that and we maintain that area, because it is an area that we have been given by other countries by the fact that we have cordial relationships with these countries, we have better bilateral agreements with these countries, and the moment we mess around, the whole world will understand that Kenya is actually on a war path, or it's not going the right direction. So the better. The sooner we rectify these problems, the sooner we have political tolerance, democratic tolerance, the better for us as a country, Lillian.
And we'll be listening into the statement from the IEBC. Dakla, let's get your remarks as well.
Sure. I would also want to say, as most of my panelists have said, that the timing of this death is actually the problem that we have, because it casts a lot of speculations. It becomes difficult for us to think that it is not political. But at the same time, I would like to echo the words of Joy, that we should also give the police time to carry out their investigations and for them to be able to communicate what are they finding, what are they saying, and to be able to communicate this information to Kenyans. And as some of my panelists have said, that we have had assassinations before in this nation, and because we have not been able to receive answers to some of the questions that we have as citizens, then we have the same fears. Is this going to end the same way? Will we be able to receive answers to the questions that we have? Bearing in mind that we are less than a week to the elections, it casts a lot of fears upon the people of this nation.
But have police been effective in their communication, and even previously, not looking at just this case alone? We know that news broke on social media. That, of course, is a concern. Secondly, we know that the IEBC commissioners were at the city mortuary. The IEBC chair confirmed that indeed he had identified the body. And, just coming 24 hours later, not really hearing sternly or strongly from the police on where they are as regards this death, and yet we're less than a week to the election.
Lillian, Mushai, the late MP, was killed under the cameras at around about off Kenyatta Avenue.
And also Juma.
Jacob Juma, I don't know where he was killed. But I know Mushai's murder was cold-blood murder done under the cameras that were under the surveillance of the police. A contract and tender that was given to Safaricom, direct tendering, direct sourcing. I expected that we would be able to trace down at least the car if our police were as effective. And I do not want to even doubt the prowess and ability of our police officers. Maybe we should ask, are their bosses as honest and diligent in their duties? I don't know, and I don't want to speculate, as Joy says, but I also don't want to foolishly carry optimism on my head and show it around the country when Jacob Juma has not woken up and we don't know what happened to him. I don't want to pretend that Mushai was killed as if the family, ever found redress, and that I'm going to be hopeful. I am a pessimistic Kenyan, because when the police get down to duty like the lady raped in the Githurai car, the perpetrators of that injustice were found and sentenced to hang. How not these others? What is the failure in that? Be that as it may, I want to echo words of hope for this country. That the DRC Congo had a great man called Mobutu Sese Seko. Kukumbendu wawanga, wazabanga. The great man who believed that the all-powerful conqueror who moves from conquest to conquest, leaving fire in its wake. He built a great palace in the Gadolite. Go there today and see for yourself what lies as ruin for the man who was once all-powerful. Someday, justice gets to happen, Lillian. Someday, Kenyans get to get justice. It may not be too soon. The wheels of justice grind slow, but they grind fine. Finally, they will grind. And I will tell them that, you see, I am a Christian. And I believe when there is book of Isaiah, Joy is the daughter of the great Bishop Masinda, she will say, when the book of Isaiah says there is no rest or peace for the wicked, then the great mighty man Bewart will tell you that he lived declared by Trun. Trun did a good job. Joy says he did nothing. Trun told us that Bewart was of the mother of Woko. And Bewart never had peace until he rested, sorry to say.
Right.
And so someday justice will happen.
We are taking a very short break. We are Staying with news surrounding the elections, which are only 6 days away, we'll be looking in particular at the KIMS system and, of course, the arrival of the presidential ballot papers. We know that the first batch arrived last night. We're also looking at concerns over the printing of extra ballot papers. We will be back with more on Citizen Extra. That's in the next hour. Stay with us.